With the pandemic forcing students to learn from home, area doctors are starting to see kids a lot more anxious than before. Well, we talked to one of those medical professionals and the district, CCISD, about what options there are out there for students struggling with anxiety.
Anxiety from being out of routine, not being able to go back to school. They probably see their parents being anxious, and then that kind of projects it.
Dr. William Fader says more kids have been coming to see him seeking treatment for anxiety.
They're way off schedule at home, so most of them are probably going to sleep a lot later.
The Corpus Christi pediatrician says it's normal for people to feel stressed or worried in uncertain times, but there's ways to cope, like exercise.
It gets their blood flowing and actually increases some of the hormones and neurotransmitters in their brain that kind of help with tensions and anxiety.
Also, vitamins like DNC to help boost the immune system.
A low dose of melatonin helps them in their sleep cycle at night, and it also has an influence on the immune system.
And getting some fresh air.
The other advantage for us here in Corpus is we have plenty of sunshine. The UV rays and all that kind of help.
Dr. Fader says anti-anxiety medication is always a last resort, and before parents try and get their children prescribed, consider counseling.
All of our school counselors are still available to our students.
CCISD Coordinator for Guidance and Counseling Candace Fricke says school counselors can be reached virtually or through the phone.
We've sent out information to parents about how to create at-home routines, how to meet the mental health needs of the students, because this is different for everyone. We've never experienced a pandemic in most of our lifetimes.
They are also posting daily social and emotional learning tips.
Monday mindfulness, wellness Wednesdays, fun Fridays, because it's important to keep a structured schedule for the children during the week to get their academics done. But it's also very important for people to take a break and engage in self-care.
Taylor Alanis, 3 News.